Hello, welcome to the Cozy Reading Corner. Today I thought I would do something a little bit different because it's a very dark and rainy day here today, and it has been a bit difficult for me to keep my spirits up the past week. I've been a little sick, and yeah, it's just so gloomy here. So I thought today I would like to read you some Proust, some of Marcel Proust's In Search of Lost Time, because I feel like one of the main aims of my channel is to make you read Proust at some point. And it's a bit difficult for me to talk about him, actually, and to talk about what this work is doing for me. So I thought I would just read you 3 different little passages from the book. So this can be a bit of a cozy video, and you can get introduced to his style of writing, his metaphors, his sentences, his flow, and then decide for yourself whether that would be a good book to pick up. And the last scene I'm gonna read is the Madeleine scene, which is one of the most famous scenes in all of world literature. So I think even if you never read Proust, you should have at least heard that scene. And I'm also gonna share a poem that I have written inspired by Proust about time, way at the end. So if you're interested in that will come way at the end. Oh yeah, I'm working from the Lydia Davis translation that is available in the Penguin Modern Classics, and I quite like it so far. So the first scene I want to read you is on page 86, and he talks about a memory he has when he was reading novels as a young boy, and it's a lot about why we would even read fictional texts and empathy, and one of my favorite scenes. So, after this central belief, which moved incessantly during my reading from inside to outside, towards the discovery of the truth, came the emotions aroused in me by the action in which I was taking part. For those afternoons contained more dramatic events than does often an entire lifetime. These were the events taking place in the book I was reading. It is true that the people affected by them were not real, as François said, but the feelings we are made to experience by the joy or the misfortune of a real person are produced in us only through the intermediary of an image of that joy or that misfortune. The ingenuousness of the first novelist consisted in understanding that in the apparatus of our emotions, the image being the only essential element, the simplification that would consist in purely and simply abolishing real people would be a decisive improvement. A real human being, however profoundly we sympathize with them, in large part is perceived by our senses, that is to say, remains opaque to us, offers a dead weight that our sensibilities cannot lift. If a calamity should strike him, it is only in a small part of the total notion we have of him that we will be able to be moved by this. Even more, it is only in a part of the total notion he has of himself that he will be able to be moved himself. The novelist's happy discovery was to have the idea of replacing these parts, impenetrable to the soul, by an equal quantity of immaterial parts, that is to say, parts which your soul can assimilate. What does it matter, thenceforth, if the actions, the emotions of this new order of creatures seem to us true, since we have made them ours, since it is within us that they occur, that they hold sway, as we feverishly turn the pages of the book over the rapidity of our breathing and the intensity of our gaze. And once the novelist has put us in that state, in which, as in all purely mental states, every emotion is multiplied tenfold, in which his book will disturb us as might a dream, but a dream more lucid than those we have while sleeping, and one whose memory will last longer, then see how, for the space of an hour, he sets loose in us all possible happinesses and all possible unhappinesses, just a few of which we would spend years of our lives coming to know, and the most intense of which would never be revealed to us, because the slowness with which they occur prevents us from perceiving them. Thus our heart changes in life, and it is the worst pain. But we know it only through reading, through our imagination. In reality, it changes as certain phenomena of nature occur slowly enough so that even if we're able to observe successively each of its different states, we are still spared the actual sensation of change. I was laughing because I felt like I was about to start crying again, and I already cried like 3 times in the past weeks reading Proust. We talked about him at university, and in my subject about time and memory in literature, our teacher in class talked about the Madeleine scene, and then he started reading it to us in French. And that's great about studying comparative literature, is that, you know, the professors usually know a lot of languages, and a lot of there's always the possibility of reading it in the original language for a lot of people. So he starts reading it to us in French, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna cry. Because I've never actually read Proust in French. I've always waited with that because I wanted to like really prepare myself and have the book in my own hands and do it at a moment when I was ready for it. But then I was sitting in class and he just like read it out loud to us, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna cry, because it really touches me in a way I cannot describe. And I don't know if you know that feeling when you have tears in your eyes and you're looking up so they don't, roll down your cheeks. That was me in that lesson. I was like, okay, don't cry. I should have said a bit further in the back, maybe. Yeah. And then this week I was sick, and I just listened to the lecture from home, and it was another one about Proust, and he read another part in French, and then I was like really crying. I was really happy that I was just at home in my bed, because it didn't have to be the weird one that cries in class. So yeah, so let's move on to the next scene. It's on page 169, and he remembers there what it was like to go on walks as a boy next to the Vivonne, that is a river, and he observes the different plants, and specifically a water lily that is always kind of being passed around by the current in the same way. And yeah, he connects that to the habits that humans have that are very difficult to shake. So let's read it together. Soon the course of the Vivonne is obstructed by water plants. First they appear singly, like this water lily, for instance, which was allowed so little rest by the current, in the midst of which it was unfortunately placed, that, Like a mechanically activated ferry boat, it would approach one bank, only to return to the one from which it had come, eternally crossing back and forth again. Pushed towards the bank, its peduncle would unfold, lengthen, flow out, reach the extreme limit of its tension at the edge where the current would pick it up again. Then the green cord would fold up on itself and bring the poor plant back to what may all the more properly be called its point of departure, because it did not stay there a second without starting off from it again, in a repetition of the same maneuver. I would find it again, walk after walk, always in the same situation, reminding me of a certain neurasthenics, among whose number my grandfather would count my Aunt Leonie, who present year after year the unchanging spectacle of the bizarre habits they believe each time they are about to shake off, and which they retain forever, caught in the machinery of their maladies and their manias. The efforts with which they struggle uselessly to abandon them only guarantee the functioning and activate the trigger of their strange, unavoidable, and morose regimes. This water lily was the same, and it was also like one of those miserable creatures whose singular torment, repeated indefinitely throughout eternity, aroused the curiosity of Dante, who would have asked the tormented creature himself to recount its cause and its particularities at greater length had Virgil, striding on ahead, not forced him to hurry after immediately, as my parents did me. Okay, let's go over to the famous Madeleine scene. In my version, that is on page 46. And it is the first time that one of these involuntary memories is triggered by an outer sensation. You'll hear it in a moment, but it comes back several times throughout the novel, but this is the first one. So it was that for a long time, when awakened at night, I remembered Cambrai again. I saw nothing of it but the sort of luminous panel cut out from among indistinct shadows, like those panels which the glow of a Bengal light of some electric projection will cut out and illuminate in a building whose other parts remain plunged in darkness. At the rather broad base, the small parlor, the dining room, the top of the dark path by which Monsieur Swann, the unconscious author of my sufferings, would arrive, the front hall where I would head towards the first step of the staircase, so painful to climb, that formed by itself the very narrow trunk of this irregular pyramid, and on the top my bedroom, with the little hallway and its glass-paned door for Mamma's entrance. In a word, always seen at the same hour, isolated from everything that might surround it, standing out alone against the darkness, the bare minimum of scenery, like that which one sees prescribed at the beginnings of the old plays for performances in the provinces, needed for the drama of my undressing, as though Cambrai had consisted only of 2 floors connected by a slender staircase, and as though it had always been 7 o'clock in the evening there. The fact is, I could have answered anyone who asked me that Cambrai also included other things and existed at other hours. But since what I recalled would have been supplied to me only by my voluntary memory, the memory of the intelligence. And since the information it gives about the past preserves nothing of it, I would never have had any desire to think about the rest of Cambrai. It was all really quite dead for me. Dead forever? Possibly. There is a great deal of chance in all this, and the second sort of chance, that of our death, often does not let us wait very long for the favors of the first. I find the Celtic belief very reasonable, that the souls of those we have lost are held captive in some inferior creature, in an animal, in a plant, in some inanimate thing, effectively lost to us until the day, which for many never comes, when we happen to pass close to the tree, come into possession of the object that is their prison. Then they quiver, they call out to us, and as soon as we have recognized them, the spell is broken. Delivered by us, they have overcome death, and they return to life with us. It is the same with our past. It is a waste of effort for us to try to summon it. All the exteriors of our intelligence are useless. The past is hidden outside the realm of our intelligence and beyond its reach, in some material object, in the sensation that this material object would give us, which we do not suspect. It depends on chance whether we encounter this object before we die, or do not encounter it. For many years already, everything about Cambrai that was not the theatre and drama of my bedtime had ceased to exist for me. When one day in winter, as I came home, my mother, seeing that I was cold, suggested that, contrary to my habit, I have a little tea. I refused at first, and then, I do not know why, changed my mind. She sent for one of those squat, plump cakes called Petite Madeleine, that looks as though they have been molded in the grooved valve of a scallop shell. And soon, mechanically, oppressed by the gloomy day and the prospect of a sad future, I carried to my lips a spoonful of the tea in which I had let soften a piece of Madeleine. But at the very instant when the mouthful of tea mixed with cake crumbs touched my palate, I quivered, attentive to the extraordinary thing that was happening in me. A delicious pleasure had invaded me, isolated me, without my having any notion as to its cause. It had immediately made the vicissitudes of life unimportant to me, its disasters innocuous, its brevity illusory, acting in the same way that love acts, by filling me with a precious essence, or rather this essence was not in me, it was me. I had ceased to feel I was mediocre, contingent, mortal. Where could it have come to me from, this powerful joy? I sensed that it was connected to the taste of the tea and the cake, but that it went infinitely far beyond it. Could not be of the same nature. Where did it come from? What did it mean? How could I grasp it? I drink a second mouthful, in which I found nothing more than in the first, a third that gives me a little less than the second. It is time for me to stop. The virtue of the drink seems to be diminishing. It is clear that the truth I am seeking is not in the drink, but in me. The drink has awoken in me, but does not know the truth, and cannot do more than repeat indefinitely, with less and less force, the same testimony, and which I do not know how to interpret, and which I want at least to be able to ask of it again and find again intact, available to me soon for a decisive clarification. I put down the cup and turn to my mind. Is it up to my mind to find the truth? But how? What grave uncertainty whenever the mind feels overtaken by itself, when it, the seeker, is also the obscure country where it must seek, and where all its baggage will be nothing to it. Seek, and not only that, create. It is face to face with something that does not yet exist, and that only it can accomplish, then bring into its light. And I began asking myself again what it could be, this unknown state, which brought with it no logical proof, but only the evidence of its velocity, its reality, and in whose presence the other states of consciousness faded away. I want to try to make it reappear. I go back in my thoughts to the moment when I took the first spoonful of tea. I find the same state without any new clarity. I ask my mind to make another effort to bring back once more the sensation that is slipping away. And so that nothing may break the thrust with which I will try to grasp it again, I remove every obstacle, every foreign idea. I protect my ears and my attention from the noises in the next room. But feeling my mind grow tired without succeeding, I now force it to accept the very distraction I was denying it, to think of something else, to recuperate before a supreme attempt. Then for a second time, I create an empty space for it. I confront it again with the still recent taste of that first spoonful, and I feel something quiver in me, shift, try to rise, something that seems to have been unanchored at a great depth. I do not know what it is, but it comes up slowly. I feel the resistance, and I hear the murmur of the distances traversed. Undoubtedly, what is fluttering this way deep inside me must be the image, the visual memory which is attached to this taste and is trying to follow it to me. But it is struggling too far away, too confusedly. I can just barely perceive the neutral glimmer in which is blended the elusive eddying of stirred up colors, but I cannot distinguish the form, cannot ask it, as the one possible interpreter, to translate for me the evidence of its contemporary, its inseparable companion, the taste, ask it to tell me what particular circumstances involved, what period of the past. Will it reach the surface of my limpid consciousness, this memory, this old moment which the attraction of an identical moment has come so far to summon, to move, to raise up from my very depth? I don't know. Now I no longer feel anything. It has stopped, gone back down perhaps. Who knows if it will ever rise up from its darkness again? 10 times I must begin again, lean down towards it. And each time, the timidity that deters us from every difficult task, from every important piece of work, has counseled me to leave, to drink my tea and think only about my worries of today, my desires for tomorrow, which may be pondered painlessly. And suddenly the memory appeared. that taste was the taste of the little piece of Madeleine which on Sunday mornings at Cambrai, because that day I did not go out before it was time for Mass, when I went to say good morning to her in her bedroom, my Aunt Leonie would give me after dipping it in her infusion of tea or lime blossom. The sight of the little Madeleine had not recalled anything to me before I tasted it, perhaps because I had often seen them since, without eating them, on the pastry cook's shelves, and their image had therefore left those days of Cambrai and attached itself to other, more recent, perhaps because of the recollections abandoned so long outside of my memory. Nothing survived. Everything had come apart. The forms, and the form, too, of the little shell made of cake, so fatly sensual within its severe and pious pleading, had been destroyed, or still half asleep, had lost the force of expansion that would have allowed them to rejoin my consciousness. But when nothing subsists of an old past, after the death of people, after the destruction of things, alone, frailer, but more enduring, more immaterial, more persistent, more faithful, smell and taste still remain for a long time, like souls, remembering, waiting, hoping, on the ruin of all the rest, bearing without giving way, on their most impalpable droplet, the immense edifice of memory. And as soon as I had recognized the taste of the piece of Madeleine dipped in lime blossom tea that my aunt used to give me, though I did not yet know and had to put off to much later discovering why this memory made me so happy, immediately the old grey house on the street, where her bedroom was, came like a stage set to attach itself to the little wing opening on to the garden that had been built for my parents behind it, the truncated section, which was all I had seen before then. And with the house, the town, from morning to night and in all weathers, the square where they sent me before lunch, the streets where I went to do errands, the paths we took if the weather was fine. And as in the game in which the Japanese amused themselves by filling a porcelain bowl with water and steeping in it little pieces of paper until then indistinct, which, the moment they are immersed in it, stretch and shape themselves, color and differentiate, become flowers, houses, human figures, firm and recognizable. So now all the flowers in our garden and in Monsieur Swann's park, and the water lilies on the Vivonne, and the good people of the village and their little dwellings, and the church, and all of Cambrai and its surroundings, all of this which is assuming from the substance emerged, town and gardens alike, from my cup of tea. So I hope you enjoyed this. What really baffled me about this scene is that Marcel Proust never actually himself experienced that scene with the Madeleine that he's describing, because if you look at letters from the time when he was writing this, he recounts that he was struggling a lot with, what could that trigger be, that sensation that would trigger that past memory, should it be the sight of something, or if it should be a taste, what what taste should it be? So I don't know, that is just so unbelievable to me, how someone can write in such details about something they've never actually experienced in the same way, maybe in another way. Anyways, I'm feeling a bit tired. I'll read you my poem, since I promised. I feel a little bit nervous about that, but I'm just gonna get it over with, and and that's what I'm gonna leave you with today. I hope you enjoyed listening to this. If you did, it would be lovely if you subscribed. Most of my viewers are not actually subscribed to my channel, so that would really mean a lot to me. And let me know what you thought, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye. I let you in through childhood doors. You crept beneath my sheets to tentatively wage your wars between my tender ears. You fed on what the day revealed. You grew through what may be, until duality adorned the hands that capture me. You wove together pain and gold. I knew no good, no crime, until you made my mind unfold, and me, I called you time.